Hey guys, hey, listen. How y'all been? How you doing? How you doing? We have a lot to unpack. So, I'd be busy during the week doing 50 million things, but I did actually get in a whole bunch of true crime docu series this week, and I want to talk about two of them. But before we get to talking about the two, we just got to have a light, icebreaker to get it popping. Okay. So we are going to talk about this damn story that I came across. All right. Now, I was really minding my black owned business. Okay. And this lady was in this comment section and she was like, oh, well, but let me show you the clip first. I'm going to show you the clip first. And then we're going to get into hey, baby, we're going to get into the whys and the how.
For a fact, I know he fucked. We
Let's
went through a lot.
refresh it because I want y'all to hear from the beginning.
Father's Day.
Thank you, wife. Appreciate it. I want to get this booty hanging from a bridge right here.
Cheating. This morning, I got a call from a young lady. She been in a relationship with my husband for 5 years since and he been dealing with multiple, women. For the last 2 years, my husband leave out the house at 7:30 p.m. I mean a.m. 7:30 a.m. and don't come. Um, I work extra hard. This girl said my husband give her $1,000 every 2 weeks for her bills and stuff like that. She told me she lied about her name. She told me everything that I never fucked nobody on. Never fucked nobody. I know three different people for a fact. I know he fucked. We went through a lot. We got past that shit. But I'm just tired of being number one when I know it's somebody out there that want to call me, that want to talk to me, that wants to be around me, that, you know what I'm saying?
And we can talk to y'all and we can do whatever y'all say. But at the end of the day, this is my wife. I love her. We going through something right now. She hurt, but we going to make it right. We going to make it right. People go through things. We go through things. So, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is.
Now, what I found intriguing about this whole situation was that in the comment section, people are nuts. In the comment section, well, in the particular comment that I wound up responding and going back and forth to, one of these women says, she should sue his behind and the other woman to get all that money back plus emotional damages. Be smart. And I have to say, in regards to matters of the law, most people on social media that are typing in comment sections are not really that smart. Number one, it's very hard to get money back from the other woman, and which is what I said. I said she can never get the money back from the other woman, but she could potentially get it back from him. And so the girl tries to go back and forth with me. She could sue both, and the judge can order the other woman to pay. And I'm like, this is how I know a lot of you women are stupid, and you're giving bad advice. You're giving bad advice to other women, right? So I said, if you believe that, okay, what obligation does the other woman have to her legally? Does she live in a state where the other woman can be charged for being a mistress? There's only 4 in America, which I was wrong. There's actually 7. It was 13. Now it's 7. So I said, you can sue anyone for anything, but that doesn't mean you will win. She will only have an actionable case against her husband for diverting marital assets. And she's like, just look up laws. She's married to this man. If she has solid proof, which she already has by the man actuing, I guess it's supposed to be acting a damn fool on camera, and the mistress knowing, absolutely she can be sued. Mistress also caused marital alienation and deprivation of intimacy. The more you know. And then this is when I had to really get in. Now, see, did they take my comment away? Let me go look and see, because I got screenshots. Some people be trying to delete the comments. They don't want to get caught out there like that. Hold on, give me 1 minute. Let's see. No, here it is. I said, I guess you missed the part where I said, does she live in a state where you can sue for that? The more you pay attention. And my bad. Hey, everybody in the chat. Hey, Nick the Quick. It's 7, not 4. Hawaii, Illinois, Mississippi, New Mexico, North Carolina, South Dakota, and Utah. If she doesn't live in these states, she can't sue the mistress. Also, since you want to be sardonic, let me break it down for you. Alienation of affection. This tort allows a spouse to sue a third party for intentionally interfering with the marital relationship, causing a loss of love or companionship. You must prove the marriage was happy. The third party actions caused alienation and there was an intent to disrupt the marriage. So when we sit in here and we're having these type of conversations on social media, at the point that you say your husband was sleeping with 50 million other women, then guess what? Your marriage was never happy. There's nothing to sue the other woman for. But the more you listen to people on social media, the more stupid you will be. Which brings us to our first case. Now, as you guys see from the title, we're talking about Jimmy Hoffa and JonBenét Ramsey. Now, there was a lot of things that I felt when I was looking at the JonBenét Ramsey case. I feel that the police department committed a gross miscarriage of justice against this family and against this child. If you guys watch the series on Netflix, the docuseries on Netflix, you see that the media self-admitted, the police department was using the media to cause pressure on the Ramseys. They wanted the Ramseys to confess. They felt that the Ramseys did it. So for those of you in my audience that are new and don't know the story of JonBenét Ramsey, some of you, this may have happened when you were children. In December 26th of 1996, a 6-year-old child by the name of JonBenét Ramsey, that was a beauty pageant queen, was kidnapped from her home. Unfortunately, she was actually deleted within her household. Now, when the mother comes down the stairs, she finds this ransom note. The ransom note was a little bit off. You could tell the person that wrote it was a little bit throwed. They were asking for a very specific amount of money. They said if the parents called anybody that the child would be deleted. Okay? Now, to me, that is always a catch-22. If somebody says if you contact somebody, they're going to delete your child, I always feel like there should be some like covert action trying to call someone, not just automatically picking up the phone and calling everybody. Now, with that being said, even though the kidnapper said, if you write somebody, if you blink, if you send a smoke signal, I'm going to delete the child, the Ramseys still called the police. They called the FBI. They called over all the family friends to the house. Now, this is a problem because be it a kidnapping or a deletion, the house is still a crime scene. You're now introducing a whole bunch of bodies into a crime scene, right? So now the house was 6,500 square feet. It was a mansion in Boulder, Colorado, and the police didn't do the best of jobs searching the house down. And actually, I take that back. I'm not going to say they didn't do the best of jobs searching the house down because I believe that the person that deleted JonBenét Ramsey was still in the house. I believe that JonBenét was alive in the house when the police first came on the scene. I believe the person was still there. I believe in all the chaos of family being there, you know, the police going back and forth, nobody taking control of the scene. I believe that afforded the person that deleted JonBenét Ramsey the opportunity to say, okay, I told you if you contacted someone, I would be deleting her, and for them to go ahead and delete her. Hey, Eyes, welcome. So the next day on the 27th of 1996, the father is, the police officer that's there. She's like, oh, just go search the house, just to give them something to do. And all of a sudden, on the floor, underneath a pink blanket, there's JonBenét Ramsey. She's deleted. There's a lot going on. There's DNA evidence that's in her underwear. And of course, oh, it has to be the father. Oh, I saw something in his eyes and I was so terrified. It was horrible. And I had my gun and I was mentally counting how many bullets I had in there. But if you felt that he was doing a thing or that he did a thing, why didn't you arrest him right then and there? This is my opinion when I'm watching the show. So anyway, they go through this whole media frenzy, and then they try to blame the little boy, the 9-year-old. CBS even did a show in I think it was 2016, where they did a simulation of the little boy, Burke Ramsey, deleting his sister. And I'm like, we have had several leaps and bounds in DNA since 1997 to now. Now, on January 15th of 1997, they knew that the DNA that was found didn't match up to the Ramsey family. See, there was no familial ties. Now, Burke and JonBenet were blood brother and sister, full brother and sister, same mother, same father. So if it was him, then the DNA, would at least matched up to each other. But in between now and then, you can match DNA. If I spit in a tube today, it can match to my family member somewhere on the other side of the road or the world, and they'll send me a letter about it. You guys remember we did that story where the girl spit in a tube and it wound up being a cold case because she got her grandmother put in jail. So at this point, I feel like the Boulder Police Department had no interest in solving JonBenét Ramsey's case. Now, at the same time, there was also a couple of other cases where homes were being intruded. There were little girls that were under attack. Their mothers just happened to wake up and catch it before it went a little too far. One mother woke up and scared the person away with pepper spray. But the other little girl also went to JonBenét Ramsey's dance studio. So it makes me feel that the Boulder City Police Department allowed a person that was interested in young women to go free. And there is no telling how far this person has grifted or drifted, how many countless little girls have been attacked through the years. And they don't really care to find out who's done it. You had a police officer during an open investigation, because the case is not closed, writing a book, giving all of his theories of the case. Oh, well, I think she wet her bed and that's why her mama deleted her. Meanwhile, the bed was not wet. You can literally see from the crime scene photos that they did take that the baby was snatched and pulled out the bed. You can see from the drag marks of the sheets on the bed. Oh, well, it was the mother's paintbrush. Okay. So if I'm a criminal and I'm underprepared to do a thing, I'm going to grab anything that's around. Like, be for real. During the documentary, they showed us a green suitcase that had a light footprint on it, a little piece of broken glass. Things that the police should have been investigating right then and there. They're calling in other people. There was an indictment that was made, but the prosecution decided not to go forward because the indictment was for child abuse. Meanwhile, you have no proof of child abuse. Now, I will say this, in all honesty, full transparency. I don't believe that people should be putting these children in these beauty pageants. I don't think that 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds should have flippers and makeup and be wearing, suggestive clothing. But when I was talking about that movie Cuties and how that movie actually speaks to dance studio culture, beauty pageant culture, everybody act like I was crazy, but they forgot about JonBenet. See, I don't do selective outrage. If you're going to be outraged about a thing, be outraged about the whole culture. There's no reason that our young athletes that are women should be running around in underwears and sports bras. There's no reason that when these children are doing dance, they should be running around and essentially their whole bodies are exposed. Even in ballet, you can wear a little skirt. Let's be serious. So what it speaks to is an undercover culture of PDF fascination. We don't want to talk about that because that's the true conversation that will really shake the table. But in any event, there's a video that popped out I want to watch. We're going to watch together. Yeah, I think they did contaminate it on purpose. They did. But here's the other thing. There was also several other items that were cataloged at the Ramsey house, at the scene of the crime, the day of the incident, that they never tested. The rope they never tested, the letter. I don't think they ever dusted the letter for fingerprints. They just wanted to make it that this woman, this cancer survivor, because Patsy Ramsey had ovarian cancer. She went through chemotherapy. She fought cancer to win for her children. And they said she was jealous of the child. She wanted to delete the child. It's weird, real weirdo shit. Like, I have never seen anybody just automatically go so hard in the paint to say that a mother and a father would commit this kind of violent crime against their own child without concrete evidence or proof. I was shocked and appalled watching this. And then in the end of it, to see all the sickos that came out claiming this, like this was a badge of honor, only for them to be excluded from the DNA. So we're just going to automatically exclude these people because of the DNA, but you're not going to exclude the mother, the father, and the brother. So much so that the DA's office ultimately had to write a letter excluding the brother after CBS tried to create a reenactment of what they felt the boy did to the daughter. They ain't never really cleared the parents, though. Now Patsy Ramsey is in her grave. John Ramsey is, he's fighting hard, but you can tell he's in his end of days. It's 30 years later. And we still don't know who deleted JonBenét Ramsey. Here's a theory to the case. What if one of the police officers that responded to the scene of the crime is really the one that did it? What if we find out this is the ultimate cover-up? Blue brothers protecting each other? Because if the police officers went in the basement and they searched the basement, because initially the police officers cleared the whole house, how do you as a police officer not see a pink blanket with a body underneath of it in the middle of the basement floor? Makes no sense to me. Anyway, let's look at this video. The housekeeper, I guess, decided she wanted to speak out. So let's see. Hey, that. Hey, sis.
Not be able to look in the mirror.
And started work in October. But as soon as the grand jury was ready to disband, Fox judges have complained that this case hasn't been able to go to the next step, the next level, move away from them as suspects to intruders. And I'll say this to the Ramseys, until they produce, well, it's who's heard it, who hasn't heard it. 6 people have, and the fact is there are signed affidavits to that effect, which is the same as testimony taken under oath. The professional careers of every one of these people is on the line with this. And I've noticed.
Well, for instance, I've always said the Swiss Army knife that I hid, put away in a cupboard, there's only one person that would have found it, and that was Patsy Ramsey. And they found it in the room where they found JonBenet.
A child beauty queen murdered, a ransom note that made no sense, and a housekeeper who claims she knows exactly what happened. For decades, the brutal killing of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey has haunted the American psyche, a case that captivated the media, baffled investigators, and tore public opinion apart. But buried beneath headlines and speculation lies a quiet voice, someone who lived inside the Ramsey household, who observed what the cameras never saw. Her name is Linda Hoffman Pugh, the family's longtime housekeeper, a woman entrusted with keys, calendars, and confidences. And she has a chilling claim that JonBenet wasn't killed by a stranger, but by her own mother, Patsy Ramsey. In a moment of rage, if Linda is right, it would mean that one of the most notorious unsolved murders in American history isn't a mystery at all, but a meticulously staged cover-up, a facade built with duct tape, a paintbrush, and a mother's desperate attempt to hide an unthinkable truth. A child beauty queen murdered, a ransom note that defies logic, and a house.
Now, this is where the hyperbole and the extra dramatics get on my nerve. Now, in the whole documentary, they never brought up Linda Hoffman. They never brought up this housekeeper. Why is she not a suspect? And when you're looking at the fact that she's the housekeeper, it lends some credence to the FBI profile of the leader, right? Someone that actually wasn't having any issue with JonBenet herself, somebody that actually had a problem with her father. Now, if you're a longtime employee, you feel like you're not getting paid the right amount of money, you're going to be slightly emotional. You may be upset. Hey, Ducky, this is your first time hearing about a housekeeper. Exactly. So let's get into it, because I want to see what she has to say, and then I'll give some additional commentary.
Housekeeper who says she knows exactly what happened. Few people were ever truly inside the Ramsey family's world. Their home was grand, perched among the quiet neighborhoods of Boulder, Colorado. From the outside, it looked like a fairy tale. But on the inside, someone like Linda Hoffman Pugh saw what others didn't, because she was there every day, doing laundry, preparing meals, watching, listening. Linda wasn't just a maid. She was the Ramseys' housekeeper, their confidant, even their emotional support. She knew their routines better than most family members do. She was in their kitchen before sunrise. She folded the children's clothes. She scrubbed their bathtub. She washed the sheets. And over time, she began to see through the polished surface of a family that America would later come to know only through headlines and suspicion. She watched John Ramsey, the powerful businessman, come and go, often quiet, often distracted. She saw Patsy, former beauty queen, now mother of two, float through the days in designer clothes, constantly busy, constantly performing. On the outside, their marriage appeared intact. But through Linda's eyes, it was anything but warm. There was a chill between John and Patsy that no amount of Southern charm could disguise. Linda remembered how they barely touched, how they lived almost separate lives under the same roof. And then there was that strange day in the kitchen, a day Linda never forgot. Patsy pulled her aside out of nowhere and asked her a question so intimate, so jarring, that it left Linda speechless. Patsy wanted to know about a sex act she was too embarrassed to name aloud. She wanted advice, guidance, like a friend would ask another. But Linda wasn't a friend. She was the help. The conversation left Linda uncomfortable. But more than that, it exposed something deeper. This wasn't just a woman sharing a marital problem. It was a glimpse into a psychological unraveling. Patsy's voice was pleading, her eyes hollow. It was as if she had no one else to talk to, no other place to unload the turmoil that was building inside her.
So now this is where the housekeeper is psycho. Kitty Kabam psycho. Like, maybe you just look like a 304 to her. Because if someone is asking you about, proclivities, it doesn't mean that they don't have anybody else to talk to. It doesn't mean that their marriage is falling apart. It means that they just trying to do something else, something extra, a little spicy, do something strange for a little piece of change. You're seeing these people every single day. So why are you not an integral part to the case? How the case was either solved or not solved. Now you're out here talking about they had marital issues since when? It is 2025, and I am today's years old where I'm ever hearing that the Ramseys had marital issues. I am today's years old where I'm ever hearing that the housekeeper had anything to say in either direction about this case. So now you're trying to paint her as a deviant. So you were there every day, housekeeper. So did they do anything abusive to the children? That's what I want to know. Right. They thought it was a burglar that went through a window. Exactly.
Over time, Linda began noticing how volatile Patsy really was. There were days she floated through the house, giddy and gracious, but other times she snapped at her children. She fought with JonBenet over clothing. She grew irritable when things weren't perfect. And Linda started wondering, was there something deeper going on? She told the grand jury she suspected Patsy had multiple personalities. It might have sounded outrageous until you spent a day in that house. Patsy could go from affectionate to icy in the blink of an eye. One moment she was dressing JonBenet in bows and pageant clothes. The next, she was shouting over spilled pineapple. And then came the tears. Linda recalled one day when Patsy broke down in the kitchen, sobbing uncontrollably. The reason? She felt unloved. John wasn't paying attention to her. He criticized her appearance. He seemed distant, even cold. As Patsy wept, John dismissed her pain, brushing it aside with silence. Linda stood frozen, watching the entire scene unfold.
People in media and social media to stop the cap. First of all, again, this would have been mainstream news. That would have been part of the tabloids. And those of us like Lorna Haytrees, like Lorna, that were alive and old enough to be, get in the National Enquirer, Star, and all of this and all of that, that would have made the tabloids. That would have made the headlines. Okay? So this is a big bag of donkey doo-doo. The children say there was no issues between the father and the mother. And again, this is a woman that was healing from ovarian cancer. So he stood by her during chemotherapy. Nobody's attractive during chemotherapy. You're going through a lot. You're radioactive. You can't be touched. Your hair is falling out. You have to get treatment every week. You know what I'm saying? You're not feeling the best. And she still might have been dealing with some psychological traumas if she was weepy after that. Because, once you have the cancer, you're always worried that you're not going to make it through your children's whole life, through their adulthood. So that may be a thing. But it's utterly preposterous where these stories come from. But let's continue. Right. They also took a close look at Patsy's obsession with the child beauty pageant circuit. And this is when she explained she also was a beauty pageant contestant and winner in, the 70s and everything like that. She felt like she wasn't going to be alive when JonBenet got to be 16, 17 years old, which is why she entered her into the children's beauty pageants, because she wanted to be able to share a part of that with her child. Like, are y'all serious or not?
In that moment, Linda saw something that changed her view of the Ramsey family forever. Beneath the wealth, beneath the glamour, was a home where emotional needs went unmet, where resentment festered quietly, and where mental instability simmered just beneath the surface. December 23rd, 1996. The Ramseys hosted their annual holiday party, inviting friends, neighbors, and business associates into their Boulder home. The wine flowed, music played, smiles were worn like armor. But according to Linda Hoffman Pugh, the housekeeper who had prepared that very home countless times before, something felt different that year. Patsy Ramsey, always polished, always poised, seemed visibly frayed, tense, edgy. She barked orders. She micromanaged details. Every garland, every platter, every place setting had to be perfect. But perfection, Linda knew, came at a cost, and Patsy was cracking under the weight of it. The home was buzzing with Christmas preparations. Gifts were wrapped, decorations were dazzling, and the family was packing for a trip to Michigan. But behind the closed doors of the Ramsey estate, tension simmered. Linda didn't work on Christmas Day, but she knew the rhythms of that household intimately. She knew how Patsy functioned when under stress, especially when things went wrong. And that's what she believes happened on the night of December 25th.
So we're not talking facts. And again, they put out this information and it's based off of a feeling. I believe you weren't there. What needed to be released to the police officers, in my opinion, is the list of partygoers. Who all attended the party the night that JonBenet was kidnapped? That's what, because they are reopening the case. I'm kind of over this video because it's just a bunch of bullshit, and honestly, it's annoying me. So we're not looking at it no more. That's it, and that's all. Period. Like I'm just gobsmacked with how they have vilified this family based off conjecture. This is the criminal justice system. This is the legal system in the United States of America. It's not really that hard to follow the leads, follow the clues, and follow the money. Like at some point, it was mentioned that John Ramsey's bonus that year from work was $1,100. It was $118,700, and the ransom note was for $118,000, which lets you know that was somebody that had a level of intimacy with the family. And I tell you what, like all these feelings, all these vibes, oh, the mom just got her while she was angry. For what? Angry for what? The little girl enjoyed performing. And this is a part that a lot of people forget too. There's several hours. Like you can literally watch 23 to 24 hours of JonBenét Ramsey performing. She enjoyed performing at these beauty pageants. That is not something that you can fake. That is not something that you can pretend. The level of charisma, the level of engagement, the level of interaction with the audience, how she was doing her performance. That child was a natural entertainer, and more likely than not, she would have been probably one of your bigger stars at this point in her life. So I don't think there was ever that issue where she just didn't want to do it. They also said they keep bringing up the pineapples because in the crime scene photo, there was a bowl of pineapples, and there was pineapples allegedly found in her stomach when they did the autopsy. Now, here's the thing about when they did the autopsy on JonBenét Ramsey that I found to be very interesting. There was a garrote tied around her neck, and it was so deeply embedded within her neck that, like, it was the skin on her neck was folding over it, and there was fingerprints, her own fingerprints on her neck for her trying to pull it away. But it was also very red, like very bloody. And at first I thought it was from, just cutting into the neck. But then they talk about the head trauma. There was an 8-inch gash in her head, and the skull had collapsed within itself. So here's the thing. If you get that type of trauma and that type of head injury, there's no need for anybody to choke you with the string. To me, that happened after the fact. And that's why the string was so red, because maybe the blood ran down and got into it. But there's a lot of things in this case that just are very much fishy. It's a lot of things where, like, what were you guys doing as a police department? And they say that the Boulder City Police, that was the first homicide of 1996. Still in all, if you were incapable or you didn't know rules and procedures on how to handle a crime scene, you should have called in help. They were ego driven. They didn't want to call in help, but you have ultimately let the leader go free for 30 years. So with the reviving of the case, if they do find the person that deleted JonBenét Ramsey, and then they find out that they have also deleted several other children, who does that fall on? That falls on the initial police officers that responded to the scene of the crime. It falls on the prosecutors that tried to prosecute the Ramseys. It falls on everybody that wasted their attention specifically putting it on one person and trying to make the charges fit instead of seeing where the crime scene took them, where the facts of the crimes took them in all actuality. But psychics did they work, child. It was a wild, wild west on that investigation. Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of nonsense. But speaking of nonsense and conjecture that goes along in media, mainstream media, social media, Jimmy Hoffa. Can we talk about Hoffa for a minute? Jimmy Hoffa was some kind of powerful man, okay? He was a Teamsters president. He had a whole bunch of money that he was in control of, and he made sure the union guys were all right. But this is the thing with unions. Unions are often slightly tied to the mafia. And, things went a little south. After JFK was put in office, Robert Kennedy kept coming at Hoffa. He was like, I don't like you, because Hoffa put his money behind Nixon. So he's like, I know you're working with the mob. I'm going to take you down. And the original charge that Kennedy was trying to bring against Hoffa was going nowhere. But somebody in Hoffa's team did actually wear a wire when they were talking about jury tampering. So Hoffa had to go to jail a little bit for that. He had to go to college, sit down, and cool off. Now, he had appointed someone to be underneath of him, and the person that he appointed to be underneath of him wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. He was able to be easily manipulated, and a lot of the beautiful luxury resorts, casinos, and hotels that you love in Atlantic City and Las Vegas were born out of that era, right? Cool beans. So when Hoffa got out of college, he's like, listen, I built this up. This is my union. I need to be president of the union again. It caused the big wave. The big families weren't having it. They were like, nah. One of the family guys, Tony Pro, he went to college too. He was mad at Hoffa because federal rule, he couldn't have his retirement based on what he was prosecuted for. And he's like, fix it. Basically, give me my money. And Hoffa's like, I can't do nothing about that. Like, it's a federal thing. He's like, but you get to keep your retirement. And he's like, yeah, it's not the same parameters. So there's already envy, there's jealousy. And then Jimmy Hoffa also wasn't Italian. He was Irish, Dutch, German. He wasn't part of the Italian family. And one thing about the mob, if you're not family, then you're not family. They'll rock with you a little bit, but it's not the same reverence. It's really not. So anyway, during Jimmy Hoffa's rise to power, he interacts with Frank Sheeran. And there's a book, I Heard You Paint Houses. Which is a euphemism for, I heard you give people a dirt nap. So anyway, Frank winds up being his right-hand man. The families are very much close. Frank Sheeran is also Irishman, but he's also tied in real close with the mafia. Now, I watched the whole movie straight through, no sleep. And then I also watched a couple of pieces that I see here and there after it. And in the book, when they're talking to Frank Sheeran and he's giving an interview, he's like, yeah, I did it. I put two in the back of his head and, we got rid of him and this is why you haven't been able to find him. It just doesn't sit well with me because if this was your best friend, would you delete your best friend? And then I got to thinking, well, if that was my best friend and the family needed closure after all these years, because this is another case that it's been forever and a year. We're talking about like 75, 77. Nobody still knows where the man's body is. Somebody said that he was somewhere very wet. Okay. So if he was cremated, did they throw his ashes in the ocean? Who knows? Did they throw that in the Michigan Lakes, Great Lakes of Michigan? Because he was deleted in Detroit, allegedly. I don't know. But if somebody's my best friend and I know their family is tortured and I know, I'm about to expire, I'm about to be up out of here, would I give that as closure to the family so they can stop wondering? Yeah, I would. But also, what if Jimmy Hoffa is just chilling somewhere? Well, probably not now. He's probably on his last kind of final couple days or whatever. But what if they had a plan where he got out the house? Listen, this is what's going down. Come with me. I'm going to pretend like bop, 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 and then you disappear. Because that is also an alternate theory to the crime as well. Everybody just wants to believe that everybody's deleted, everybody's dead, and the worst and everything with everybody. As if you don't see people faking their deletions all the time. But anyway, scientists have finally solved the murder, allegedly, because even though Frank Sheeran has confessed to this, they still don't believe him. They don't believe him. He needs more people. So we're going to look at this as well.
By mobsters, but who was the trigger man? For 50 years, the world asked one question. What happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
What happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
What happened with Jimmy Hoffa?
Now, in 2025, scientists have finally solved the mystery. And it's far worse than anyone imagined.
So you're saying your father buried Jimmy Hoffa?
Yes.
A chilling discovery beneath a New Jersey highway has shaken the country, and even Jesse Waters called it the most disturbing revelation in modern crime history. This wasn't solved by the FBI or a mobster's confession. It was science and a witness who waited 5 decades to speak. What they uncovered has rewritten history and exposed how close we came to losing the truth forever. The Jimmy Hoffa mystery is no longer unsolved. The day Jimmy Hoffa vanished. On July 30th, 1975, Jimmy Hoffa left his house in Bloomfield Township, Michigan, around 1:15 p.m., wearing a dark suit and his usual no-nonsense expression. He was headed to the Machus Red Fox restaurant in Bloomfield Hills, a suburban steakhouse just north of Detroit. The meeting was supposed to be with 2 men he knew well, Anthony Tony Jack Giacalone and Anthony Tony Pro Provenzano, both of them deeply rooted in the Teamsters and tangled in the mob. Hoffa told his wife he'd be back by dinner. He never came home. That was the last confirmed sighting of the most powerful labor leader America had ever seen. One moment he was sitting in a parking lot near the restaurant, possibly waiting or already confronting someone. And the next, he was gone. No body, no confirmed crime scene, no final words. Just a running car, a pair of glasses left behind, and silence. To understand why his disappearance sparked such chaos, you have to understand who Hoffa really was. He wasn't just the president of the Teamsters. He was the man who turned the union into an empire. Hoffa commanded power through a mix of working-class loyalty and criminal intimidation. He negotiated with presidents and mafia bosses alike. For years, he was the connection between American industry and the underworld, and everyone knew it. But knowing and proving are 2 very different things. In 1967, Hoffa was sentenced to 13 years in prison for jury tampering, fraud, and bribery. But in 1971, President Richard Nixon commuted his sentence under the condition that he not engage in union activity until 1980. Hoffa, of course, ignored that. By 1975, he was attempting a comeback, making calls, arranging meetings, trying to claw his way back to power. And that made people nervous. Very powerful people who had everything to lose if Hoffa returned. The timeline of his last day is as precise as it is eerie. He arrived at the Red Fox shortly before 2 p.m. By 2:15, he was reportedly pacing the parking lot, frustrated. By 2:45, witnesses say he was gone. His car, a green 1974 Pontiac Granville, was found still parked the next morning. Inside were his personal belongings, untouched. No sign of a struggle, no blood, no note. Just an open mystery that seemed to get darker with every passing year. The FBI launched what would become one of the longest-running and most expensive investigations in its history. They chased tips from New Jersey to Florida, dug up fields, drained lakes, and surveilled mobsters. But no one ever stood trial. and no physical evidence was ever recovered. Not a single bone. As the years passed, theories piled up like gravel on an unmarked grave. Some believed he was incinerated in a mob-connected crematorium. Others claimed he was buried in the foundation of a Detroit stadium. A few said he was fed to pigs. There were even whispers of government involvement, that maybe Hoffa knew too much and trusted too many people on both sides of the law. But for all the noise, one fact remained constant. No one could prove what happened. It became a cold case so legendary, it took on a life of its own. Generations grew up hearing about Hoffa's fate as urban myth, the ultimate American riddle. And with every year that passed, the possibility of answers faded a little more. Until now. Because in 2025, a single witness finally came forward. And what he claimed to have seen 50 years ago, at the exact time, in the exact place, was something no one ever expected. The FBI's dead ends and dirt roads.
Now, y'all. They even tried to blame Hoffa's adopted son, Chucky. They said he was part of it. He drove Hoffa to the place where he was deleted, right? So now, in 2025, this very year, they're saying that he found his body. Put a 1 in the chat if you believe that they found his body. Put a 2 in the chat if you think he was cremated. If you think he was buried somewhere, put a 1. If you think he was cremated, put a 2. Okay, see y'all on. Oh, I can't even put cremated, child. Okay, let's see, Trees. That's what I'm thinking too. But let's see, because this is the insanity of these cold case files. It goes on for decades and decades and decades and decades, and then, child, whatever. Let's see.
In the years following Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance, the FBI operated like a machine with no brakes. They launched what they called Operation Disappearance, a full-scale investigation involving dozens of agents, surveillance on known mob figures, and constant media briefings. But for all their manpower, they kept circling the same maze of conflicting leads, stonewalling informants, and fruitless searches. Each time they thought they were close, the trail would vanish, like Hoffa himself had been swallowed whole by the earth. One of the earliest theories centered around a mob hit ordered by Anthony Provenzano. He was known for his short temper and violent streak, and had allegedly threatened Hoffa not long before the meeting at the Red Fox. FBI surveillance caught whispers, vague suggestions, men talking in half sentences that seemed to dance around the truth. But the problem was always the same. No one would talk. Everyone was either too scared, too loyal, or already dead. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, tips trickled in from all corners of the country. Hoffa was buried under a swimming pool in Michigan. He was sealed in an oil drum and shipped to New Jersey. He was chopped up and fed through a meat grinder in a mafia-run restaurant. There were dozens of tips, and each one led to a fresh excavation. Each one turned up nothing but dirt, broken bricks, and disappointment. Perhaps the most infamous of these rabbit holes was the theory that Hoffa was buried beneath Giants Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. It captured the public imagination in the 1980s, largely fueled by mob hitman Donald "Tony the Greek" Francos, who claimed Hoffa's body was transported there and buried in the concrete. The FBI never confirmed the story, and when the stadium was demolished in 2010, nothing was found. But for decades, the myth held strong, a modern-day legend built beneath a football field. By the 2000s, the Hoffa case became something of a professional curse inside the Bureau. Agents either avoided it altogether or approached it with weary resignation. Even the most determined investigators had to admit it. Without a body, without a murder weapon, and without a credible witness, there was nothing to prosecute.
Precisely. Now, also, they know the house that he allegedly, that was the last place that he was ever seen. What I didn't see was that there was any DNA evidence picked up from the house. Now, they did say that there was a hair that was picked up from a car that he was allegedly riding in with his adopted son, one of Tony Pro's guys, and Frank Sheeran, right? But who knows how long the hair was there, let's be honest. especially if that's his adopted son car. It could have came there at any time. Like, come on, let's be for real. But in the house, if you're shot, they didn't find any blood evidence. And we're talking about 75. So in 75, they weren't really that great at cleaning up crime scenes. You understand what I'm saying? The criminals, that is. Nobody was pulling a Dexter. Nobody had a clean room. So you mean to tell me the way blood spatter goes, somebody gets shot in the back of the head, blood would be everywhere. There would be blood spatter on the walls, and blood would leak from the body. Even if they were moving the body, there would be some evidence. Even though, you know, in the Irishman movie, they try to show Tony Pro's guy putting some like kind of tiling on the floor. Blood seeps through tiling. It was very clearly thin tiling. So anyway, let's continue.
Hoffa's case was like quicksand. The more they dug, the deeper they sank. And yet, they kept trying. In 2013, FBI agents drilled through a field in Oakland Township, Michigan, based on a tip from reputed mobster Tony Zerilli. Zerilli claimed Hoffa was buried in a shallow grave beneath a concrete slab. They brought in cadaver dogs, forensic archaeologists, heavy equipment. Again, nothing. In 2022, they returned to New Jersey, focusing on a site beneath the Pulaski Skyway in Jersey City. This was prompted by another tip, one that suggested Hoffa's remains had been dumped there at a construction site shortly after his disappearance. The Bureau secured the location, conducted tests, used ground-penetrating radar, and even removed portions of the soil. When reporters asked if they found anything, the answer was simple and definitive. No human remains were located. Another dead end. What no one knew at the time was that they might have searched the wrong spot. Not by miles, but by meters. Just a few yards away from their excavation zone, in the same stretch of Jersey industrial sprawl, the real story had been waiting in silence. It had been witnessed, it had been buried, and it had never been touched. For decades, the FBI had been operating in a loop, chasing ghosts and rumors, while the one person who saw everything remained quiet. Not because he was part of it, but because he was afraid. That silence would cost 50 years of history. And when it finally broke, the story didn't just change. It collapsed the entire narrative the FBI had spent half a century trying to build.
So now we're hearing, okay, meters, right? Because this is a very live reaction to this video. Y'all are seeing me react to this in real time. So the cadaver dogs missed it by meters. Then how good are the cadaver dogs? A meter is a pretty small expanse of land, right? Dogs are supposed to have a scent of smell that's out of this world, especially these cadaver dogs. So you mean to tell me they couldn't smell nothing that close to them? You mean to tell me all the seismography, all of the radar that was done on the land, you just searched one specific square? Is it that this is a conspiracy to keep it hidden? Because if in this video we see that they've actually dug up Hoffa's body, bitch, I'm gonna fall on the floor. I promise you that. Like, this is pure insanity. And shout out to the mob, shout out to the mafia, because the mafia has played in the government's face for years. They tell the government anything, and because these are made men wise guys and they know they've done nefarious things, they just go ahead and take the tips and go for it. They're not confirming what is being said or what hasn't been said. They're just going in on it like, yeah, that's true. Child, these people are stupid. Anyway, let's continue.
They were close. Closer than they ever knew. But they weren't close enough. The attorney who wouldn't let it go. Chris Franzblau didn't set out to solve the Jimmy Hoffa mystery. In fact, most of his legal career had very little to do with high-profile disappearances or unsolved murders. But what made Franzblau different from other attorneys in his field was his memory. He remembered everything. Cases, conversations, even glances exchanged in courtrooms that most people would have forgotten the next day. And when it came to Hoffa, he remembered more than he probably should have. He was already a seasoned New Jersey attorney by the time Hoffa vanished in 1975, known for defending mob-connected clients and navigating the murky back channels of the legal system. Franzblau wasn't flashy, but he had a reputation for being methodical, calculated, and, more than anything, curious. When Hoffa disappeared, it wasn't just another news story to him. It was personal. Not because he knew Hoffa directly, but because he knew the type of men Hoffa was dealing with, and he knew how those kinds of stories usually ended. Over the years, Franz Blau worked with and around people who, at one point or another, had been linked to the Teamsters, to organized crime, or to both. In quiet conversations behind closed doors, his clients would say things, little details, casual asides, half-truths laced in bravado or whispered fear. Nothing concrete, nothing that could be taken to court. But Franz Blau collected them anyway. He kept journals. He asked questions that didn't sound like questions. And above all, he never stopped paying attention. By the 1990s, most people had given up on the Hoffa case. It was old news, a cold trail buried under decades of media noise and false leads. But Franz Blau couldn't shake the feeling that something about the official narrative didn't add up. He remembered which places had been searched, and more importantly, which ones hadn't. He remembered a client who once talked about a construction site that had suddenly shut down in late 1975. He remembered the look on that man's face when Franz Blau casually asked, "What happened there?" He didn't get an answer. Not then. But the silence told him everything. Franz Blau never tried to become the center of the Hoffa story. He never went on television or published wild theories. He was a lawyer, not a showman. Still behind the scenes, he followed the case like a man watching smoke rise from a house no one realized was still burning. When the FBI announced their latest dig near the Pulaski Skyway in 2022, Franz Blau shook his head. They were close, but they weren't looking in the right spot. He knew that much. But he also knew that no one would take him seriously unless he had something more than memory and speculation. So he waited, quietly, patiently. He told a few colleagues he was working on a book, a final account of his career, something to keep his mind sharp. He called it The Last Mob Lawyer. It was meant to be a collection of courtroom stories, legal insights, maybe even a few name drops for old time's sake. But as he started putting pen to paper, something shifted. The Hoffa case, which had always lived at the edge of his memory, started pushing its way to the front. It refused to be just another chapter. It demanded attention. And then, out of nowhere, something changed. A knock on his door, a phone call, a message he never expected. Not from the FBI, not from a journalist, from someone else entirely. That's when Franz Blau knew. This wasn't just a story anymore. This was a reckoning. Mystery solved. In 2025, the Jimmy Hoffa mystery.
Y'all ready? Y'all ready? Y'all ready? If y'all ready for the mystery to be solved, put a 1 in this chat, honey, because it's far worse than we thought, apparently. Apparently. Franz Blau done got to the whole truth of the matter, honey. And he said that the person that hit him up, honey, and said, listen, they had it wrong all of these years, for 50 years. I done held the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That's what they said, honey. We finna see, child. Look, let's see.
Mystery took a turn no one expected. After 50 years of false leads, dug-up fields, and whispered theories, it wasn't a new tip from the FBI or a mobster's deathbed confession that cracked the case. It was a quiet phone call from a man named Jeff to a 93-year-old New Jersey attorney named Chris Franz Blau. Jeff was just 22 years old in the summer of 1975, a recent college graduate working construction in Jersey City. One afternoon, on a site beneath the Pulaski Skyway, he saw something that would stay with him for the rest of his life. A group of men arrived in black Cadillacs. One had Michigan plates. They pulled a large shape, wrapped in a white sheet, out of the trunk and lowered it into an open pit. Jeff stood frozen, watching. That moment had burned itself into Jeff's memory, but he never told anyone. His father warned him not to say a word, told him the kinds of men involved wouldn't think twice about silencing a witness. So Jeff kept quiet. For decades, he followed the headlines, watched the failed FBI digs, heard all the wild theories, and said nothing. But in late 2023, Jeff reached out to Franz Blau. The reason? He said, "Everyone's dead now." He didn't want to carry it anymore. He wanted someone to know what he saw. Franz Blau listened carefully. He'd heard more than his share of false stories over the years, but this one felt different. Jeff wasn't trying to sell a book or make a name for himself. He simply wanted the truth to be known. According to reports, Franz Blau recorded the statement and passed the details to a team of independent investigators and scientists. Unlike past FBI efforts that covered wide areas with heavy equipment and media pressure, this time the focus was narrow. Very narrow. Jeff had given them a precise spot, down to the approximate distance from a former support beam and the depth of the excavation. Scientists arrived with ground-penetrating radar and soil analysis tools in early 2025. What they found was astonishing. Beneath the surface, there was clear evidence of a human-sized disturbance, soil that had been dug up and refilled, marked by high levels of decomposition gases and a spike in nitrogen and phosphorus. They found degraded fabric fibers and chemical traces consistent with human blood. Then came the DNA testing. The samples were old and partial, but they were enough to compare to DNA submitted years ago by Hoffa's family. The result? Reports suggest a strong familial match. Not 100% proof, but close enough to send shockwaves through the scientific community and beyond.
Wait a damn minute. You lying to me. Because then that means that the whole Irishman movie is a lie then, yeah? That would mean that Frank absolutely did not give him 2 in the back of the head and then have him cremated. Uh-oh. Is this the truth or is this a lie? Is the DNA corrupted? Was the DNA sample that they took back then the truth? Or is this one that they just took off the body not so accurate? Is it his brother? Did Hoffa have a brother, cousin, son? Because he only had one son. His daddy was gone. So, what? Shut up. What? Right, Hoffa could have paid somebody. Child, let's listen. Cousin.
Reporters scrambled to make sense of it. Some of them uttered the words that would be quoted across the country. This is disturbing. And it was. Not just because Jimmy Hoffa had been dumped in a pit like garbage, but because the answer had been right there the whole time. In 2022, the FBI had searched the general area, but missed Jeff's location by just a few feet. Scientists finally solved the Jimmy Hoffa mystery in 2025, and it's far worse than we thought. Not only had Hoffa's body likely been buried in a public work site under one of the most heavily traveled highways in New Jersey, but the clues were never hidden. They were ignored, buried in bureaucracy, fear, and silence. And it took one man's decision to speak up, half a century later, to finally uncover what decades of official investigations could not. Why the FBI missed it. In 2022, the FBI came within inches of solving the Jimmy Hoffa mystery. They had the location. They had the historical suspicion. They had the resources. But somehow, they still missed it. When they descended on the Pulaski Skyway site in Jersey City, the media circled like vultures, expecting something big. Agents in windbreakers roped off the area. Ground-penetrating radar swept back and forth, and reporters camped out for days waiting for the moment someone shouted that a body had been found. But it never came. The Bureau called off the dig, declaring that no human remains were discovered. Just more dirt, more disappointment, and another chapter closed, prematurely. But now, with Jeff's statement and the scientific findings from 2025, we know the truth. The FBI was close, just not close enough. They had dug in the general area, but not in the exact spot Jeff had described. Their search grid had stopped just feet short of where the evidence was buried. Had they widened the perimeter or followed through on the full scope of their radar anomalies, they might have found it themselves. Instead, they left the most important piece of the puzzle untouched, resting silently under layers of gravel and construction fill. The question now being asked is, how did they get it so wrong? Part of the answer lies in the nature of the tip that led them there in the first place. In 2022, the Bureau acted on information that was vague and lacked specific coordinates. It came from a journalist who had received secondhand accounts from a mob-connected source. The location was right, but the details were thin. As a result, the FBI carved out a search zone based on convenience, not precision. They had a limited window to operate and needed to justify the effort to their superiors. Once initial scans didn't show strong enough anomalies, the site was written off. Their report listed it as investigated and cleared. But the more uncomfortable truth is that the Hoffa investigation had already become a political and reputational minefield for the Bureau. After decades of public failures and embarrassing dead ends, they weren't eager to gamble on yet another tip. There was pressure to show progress, but also to avoid another circus. They couldn't afford another false alarm. So when early scans didn't immediately scream burial site, the instinct was to pack up and move on. There's also a deeper issue, one that haunts many long cold cases: bureaucracy. By 2022, the Hoffa file had passed through so many hands, been reshuffled through so many offices, that institutional memory had fractured. Some agents were chasing Hoffa like he vanished last week, while others saw the case as a relic. That internal divide, along with shifting priorities, meant the investigation was no longer driven by obsession but by obligation. And yet, the clues were always there. Chris Franzblau had collected pieces of them over the years. Jeff had lived with the heaviest one in silence. Even the local workers who were on site that summer in 1975 had whispered about strange things being done at that pit.
Listen, I'm not going to do this to y'all anymore. I'm sorry. It's not the truth. It is not the truth. Oh, I'm so sick of media, period. Let's look at what the news, the actual news, has to say. Because let me tell you something. This is why I'm glad that YouTube is cracking down on a couple of things on July 15th. Because my God, today and tomorrow and forever, that whole entire video that we just watched is completely unverified. While we were letting it play, I checked multiple sources, and no, it's not true. They were not able to verify Hoffa's remains. Anyway, let's look at this from New Jersey.
That's you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's Jimmy Hoffa.
Okay.
Chris Franzblau is a witness to history. As a 93-year-old practicing attorney, he has a lifetime of secrets stored in his mind. He's defended members of the Genovese crime family and once represented the Teamsters when Jimmy Hoffa was president of the union.
What was Jimmy Hoffa like as a person when you knew him?
He was a cold fish kind of guy, all business.
Hoffa vanished in Michigan in 1975. After going to meet with a Genovese crime family member. Hoffa's body never found. But now Franzblau says a witness has come forward with his story. A man named Jeff, who when he was in his 20s, says he saw men in 2 cars dumping a body near the Pulaski Skyway in Jersey City.
One was a black Cadillac, as he thought it was, with Michigan plates.
Jeff was working on his father's property, logging trucks that were bringing dirt to and from the site.
He said, I saw from where I was the body taken out of the trunk of one of those cars. I saw them put it in the excavation.
Why does he feel it's okay to tell you now or to
Everybody's dead now. That's the only reason.
And this is the area where that witness said Jimmy Hoffa was allegedly dumped. Today, it's at the end of Broadway in Jersey City. There's now a building here that runs along the Hackens.
So one has a point, and he's buried right in that point.
As for whether Jeff is credible, Franzblau says yes, that Jeff told his father and college roommate at the time and then never spoke of it again.
About, in my mind, He has no ulterior motive. He's not looking for publicity.
The FBI has
But you
searched the
are
area
for your
near the
book.
Pulaski Skyway, but no remains were ever found. As Franz Blau's new book, The Last Mob Lawyer, is released, he admits he's sometimes baffled by the enduring interest in Jimmy Hoffa.
I don't know, except he was a powerful figure as a president.
In Jersey City, Eileen LaPalmer, Pix 11 News.
And this is the thing, like, the person that you're using to tell the story, they don't have anything to gain, that's for sure. However, you do. You do, because you're selling a book. See, this is the thing when it comes down to JonBenét Ramsey, when it comes down to Jimmy Hoffa, when it comes down to sensationalism in media, and like what people are doing and not doing with these cases. Like, y'all are doing entirely too much because you want to have the notoriety, because you want to be the one to say that you've solved the crime. And honestly, the times has passed. Like, if we're honest with JonBenét Ramsey, I very much doubt we will ever find out the truth of what happened to that little girl. Ever, because there's been like about a good 4 people that came forward and said, details that shouldn't be public knowledge, that weren't public knowledge, and it comes to find out, again, they were excluded from the DNA. With Hoffa, please, they're going to be talking about Jimmy Hoffa until Jesus comes back, and I very much doubt they'll get to the truth. Do I believe that Frank Sheeran actually harmed his very, very good, very close friend because of an allegiance that he had to the mob? Absolutely not. I'm more likely to believe that he helps him to escape because he didn't have a choice. Like, it was either going to be the both of them, or if it was going to be Hoffa, and he had already put himself in a good place to be, because he was a thief. He was a thief and a deleter. So, these cold cases are a doozy. But when you have people that can trade off of somebody else's pain in order to benefit themselves or their life, you're going to see people doing all right. He wants those book sales. You're going to see people saying and doing all manner of nonsense in order to get a leg up. Anyway, I got things to do this Sunday. Just wanted to share that with y'all. I've been watching a couple other things. We might discuss it, because as I'm watching these things, I'm like, this can't be life. And you literally cannot be selling these stories to people to make them believe it's the truth. Like, to me, The Irishman was another one of those mob movies like Goodfellas or Casino. Even there are actual literal members of mob families on YouTube now talking about what happened back in the day, fighting with each other and arguing with each other on social media. And I'm just like, this is what we do now? Like, stop it. Stop it. Grow up. Anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's show, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Peace.
It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Right now, I'm going to mind my fucking business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my mind your business. 100K or more in my pocket. I need 20K by this week. I need 100K or more. You hear me? In cash. I need 20K by this week. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. I don't live here. I'm chilling. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Clear the way. Clear the way. Clear the way. You hear me? It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Right now, I'm going to mind my fucking business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my business. It's against my religion to tell y'all my business. Tell y'all my mind your business. I need 100K or more in my pocket. I need 20K by this week. I need 100K or more. You hear me? In cash. I need 20K by this week. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. Talk too much. You talk too much. I don't live here. I'm chilling. Sway, this my shit.
Sway, the weed makes God. Please come here. Come.